The objective of this topic is to be able to perform oxyacetylene applications safely with knowledge of related hazards and precautions.
Accidents can result in serious injury. What people fail to realize is that accidents occur not because of a lack of protective equipment, but because of carelessness, lack of knowledge, and misuse of equipment.
Safety is described as being secure from harm or danger, free from injury or danger, and unhurt. Safety, under any condition, is knowing about possible hazards, being observant, applying good judgment, and avoiding trouble. Safety habits should be practiced in our daily lives at home as well as on the job. Both locations provide the setting for a long list of possible injuries: cuts and punctures, burns, electric shock, eye damage, poisoning, and of course, many more.
Oxyacetylene welding and cutting applications have certain safety risks and potential hazards. They require ongoing safety precautions and demand that supervisors be alert, responsible, and tough in enforcing safety regulations. These regulations are usually in accordance with federal and state law and local safety codes. Safety precautions can be considered in three categories: the location of welding, the operation of equipment, and the safety and health of personnel.
When looking at the location of welding or the worksite, preparations include precautions for fire and explosion, air contamination, and shop cleanliness. First of all, ensure that the area is specifically designated for hot work. The area should be inspected and thoroughly searched for combustible and flammable materials. Many companies require that a welding permit, sometimes called a hot work permit, be obtained and posted when welding involves potential hazards, or when welding in areas where welding is typically not done. A hot work permit provides a checklist of required precautions, describes where, when, and by whom the work will be done, and provides emergency contact information. Hot work permits are usually completed by a safety supervisor. Have a fire extinguisher in an accessible location, and when explosive or flammable materials are exposed, post a fire watch in the vicinity.
Because oxyacetylene equipment is more portable than other types of welding equipment, it can be taken into areas where there may be a greater risk of fire or combustion. A great number of fires that start in industrial settings are caused by metal cutting and welding in areas not specifically designated or approved for such hot work. Do not weld near flammable material and remove any combustible materials and prevent their future accumulation. Molten metal from cutting and welding can fly 25 feet or more. Therefore, all combustibles should be a safe distance away, at least 35 feet. Also, protect combustible flooring and walls from heat or sparks. Work sites should not only be designed to protect from fire, but also to protect fellow workers with enclosed fire-resistant curtains or tinted transparent shields. This protects nearby workers from harmful light from the arc, while reducing the chance of fires from flying sparks.
You may have to work in confined spaces, like small compartments and tanks. Consider such spaces as unsafe until they are inspected or until adequate confined space precautions are taken. Most companies require employees working in a confined space to complete a training program before any work can be done.
Work sites should also be properly ventilated to keep the air clean and breathable. Potential harm from fumes and gases can be avoided by using proper ventilation in compliance with the AWS ANSI Standard Z49.1 Safety in Welding, Cutting, and Allied Processes. The source of air contamination from oxyacetylene applications are fluxes, paint, oil, grease, and solvents on the surface of the metal, and from welding metals such as zinc, cadmium, lead, beryllium, stainless steel, and galvanized steel. These metals vaporize when welded or cut and produce hazardous gases that must be kept under control by proper ventilation and proper breathing equipment. Always refer to ANSI Z49.1 for any specific precautions.
When welding in confined areas, any gas that displaces the oxygen in the air is dangerous and can be fatal. Leaking gas can cause suffocation or explosion. Make sure breathable air levels are monitored when welding in a confined space. If there are leaks in fuel supply hoses, you may be overcome by lack of oxygen.
In some cases, portable extraction units may be needed for more direct removal of fumes, but in all cases, keep your head out of the smoke and fumes.
The worksite must also be maintained properly. Good housekeeping can prevent injury. Filler rods dropped or left on the floor can cause slipping hazards. Torches that are lit but not in use must be secured in brackets or torch holders rather than merely laid aside. A lit torch should never be left unattended. Trailing hoses should be kept out of the way to prevent tripping hazards. Hoses should be protected from hot or molten metal and sparks.
Safety precautions for oxyacetylene equipment and their operation cannot and must not be overlooked. Use only approved apparatus that have been examined and tested for safety. Proper precautions with regard to compressed gas cylinders can make the difference between life and death. Handle and store all cylinders carefully. Store them upright with caps on, in dry, well-ventilated and protected places, away from heat and combustible material. Do not store oxygen and fuel gas cylinders in the same location. All cylinders should be stored in an upright position. This is especially true for acetylene. If an acetylene cylinder has been laid down for any period of time, stand it upright for at least 2 hours to allow settling of the acetone and acetylene inside the cylinder.
Do not allow anyone to tamper with cylinder safety devices, such as fusible plugs. Fusible plugs are a safety feature designed to melt on severely overheated or burning acetylene tanks and release a high-velocity stream of gas or flame. When in use, cylinders should be secured to a wall, frame, or structural support, or secured in a portable cart. They must be kept at least 20 feet or more from combustible materials, sparks, or open flame, and away from elevators, stairs, or gangways. And even when tanks are in use, it is best to keep the protective cap with the cylinder at all times.
When not in use, cylinders should be closed, capped, and marked empty when empty. Store them securely and away from full cylinders. Cylinders should not be dropped or struck, used as rollers, moved with magnetic crane lifts, used in an electric circuit, or damaged with an arc strike. They should not be open or closed with wrenches when valve hand wheels are provided. Valves, hoses, pipes, and other distribution equipment must be kept in good repair.
Compressed gases must only be used for their intended purpose. Never use them in place of compressed air. Oxygen-saturated clothing will burn as if soaked in gasoline.
Do not attempt to transfer acetylene from one cylinder to another, to refill them, or to mix other gases with acetylene. This can damage equipment and may cause an explosion.
Regulators, gauges, and fittings also require precautions that cannot be overlooked. Never attempt to force non-matching or cross threads of any connection. Observe the difference between right and left-handed fittings. Some acetylene connections are notched to identify them as left-handed threads. Regulators demand inspection before they are connected to cylinders. Check for foreign matter and damaged threads on both the regulator connector and the threaded nipple of the cylinder. Stand away from the valve port and quickly open and close the valve to blow out any dirt before attaching the regulator.
Inspect all hoses and fittings for damage and replace if any damage is found. Discard hoses that are thin, worn out, or torn. Do not tape repair damaged hoses. Never use oil to lubricate any part of the oxygen or acetylene connections. This includes oily hands or gloves. Most importantly, never allow oil or grease to come in contact with any part of oxygen or acetylene gas systems. Even small amounts of oil may ignite violently with explosive force in the presence of oxygen.
Similar precautions apply to check valves, torches, and tips. First of all, make sure that connecting threads are undamaged. A simple way to inspect for proper operation of a check valve is by blowing air into both ends. The air should pass through in only one direction. If it passes through in both directions, the valve is not operating properly and should be replaced. Check valves must be connected at either the torch or the regulator end of the hose assembly and should be gas tight.
The torch and tip assembly should be inspected for damaged seating surfaces on the tip and mixing chamber. Check for any damage to the O-ring gaskets as well. If any one of the connections between cylinder and tip is not tight, the flame may backfire or flashback may occur.
A flashback happens when the flame burns in and beyond the mixing chamber, making a loud snap or pop as the flame goes out. Without the use of flashback arresters, the flame can burn back through the hose assembly and into the gas cylinders.
If a flashback occurs, immediately shut off the torch acetylene valve, then close the oxygen valve. Then close both cylinder valves, closing the acetylene valve first. If flashbacks continue to occur, check for an overheated tip, an incorrect gas working pressure setting, an incorrect tip orifice size, or a loose or worn out tip. Backfires and flashbacks can be avoided by making sure that all connections are gas tight, torch valves are closed when not in use, working pressures are correct for the size of the tip, and make sure the system is purged of air before lighting the torch.
Everything mentioned up to this point are precautions to protect you. However, safe practices must be observed during use of the equipment as well. Equipment is only as safe as the person using it. Eye injuries are serious, often resulting in impaired vision or permanent loss. Eye protection must be worn for all oxyacetylene applications, along with a suitable filter lens.
Safety glasses with side shields must be worn when any welding, grinding, or cutting operations are done, even under a welding helmet or goggles. Generally, for most oxyacetylene applications, a number 4 lens or filter plate is adequate for nearby personnel in welding or cutting areas. A number 5 lens is sufficient for light cutting and welding. A number 6 lens is recommended for gas welding or cutting of medium thickness material. And when welding or cutting heavy and thick materials, a number 8 lens is recommended. Lens shade selections are given only as a guide and may be varied to suit individual needs. Charts and selection guides are available for reference.
Earplugs or suitable hearing protection may not just protect your hearing, but can keep a spark or piece of metal out of your ear. Special clothing should also be worn during oxyacetylene applications. A hat is necessary to protect your hair when welding or cutting. Gloves should be thick enough to prevent burning through, yet be comfortable when holding the torch. They should have gauntlets to protect your wrists from heat and metal spatter. Regular working clothes should be worn with the sleeves rolled down and the collar and cuffs buttoned. They should be made of flame-resistant material and be free of pockets or flaps that trap sparks and molten metal. Worn, distressed, or loose-fitting clothing should not be worn, as it will not protect you from sparks and may even catch fire. High-top or tightly fitting ankle safety shoes are recommended. Street shoes are too open and provide an entry for hot sparks and metal. For heavy-duty welding and cutting, leather aprons, sleeves, or both should be worn.
Other precautions to bear in mind are: never do any welding or cutting on containers that have held flammable or toxic substances. Use the recommended gas pressures. Do not guess. If you are not sure what the correct pressure should be, ask your instructor or supervisor. Be ready to put out any fires promptly with fire extinguishers, water hose, or sand. If there is a possibility that a smoldering fire may still occur, post a lookout at the scene and continue to monitor the hot work area.
Remember, you are the most important part of any safety program. Be observant and notify your supervisor of any unsafe conditions. Report any and all injuries, and if you recognize a potential hazard, stop work immediately and take corrective action. Safety is an important part of working hard to get the job done right.